listeners, to Nightmares in Onyx. I am Vincent, your guide through the shadows. Tonight, I bring you 5 chilling tales to haunt your imagination. As the autumn wind howls and the veil between worlds grows thin, gather close and prepare yourselves for a journey into the darkest corners of human fear. Let us begin. In the small town of Hollow Creek, there was a pumpkin patch that appeared every October. No one knew who tended it, but each year, as the leaves turned golden and fell, rows upon rows of perfect pumpkins would sprout from the earth overnight. Sarah had just moved to Hollow Creek, eager to embrace small-town life. When she heard about the mysterious pumpkin patch, she couldn't resist investigating. On a crisp autumn evening, she drove out to the field on the outskirts of town. The sight that greeted her was breathtaking. Hundreds of pumpkins glowed softly in the twilight, their orange skin seeming to pulse with an inner light. Sarah walked between the rows, marveling at their uniformity. Each pumpkin was exactly the same size and shape, without a single blemish. As she reached out to touch one, a voice behind her made her jump. "Beautiful, aren't they?" An old man stood there, his wrinkled face illuminated by the eerie glow. "Go on, take one. It's tradition." Sarah hesitated, but the old man's smile was kind. She selected a pumpkin and took it home, placing it on her porch. That night, she dreamed of the patch, of pumpkins growing and swelling beneath a blood-red moon. The next morning, Sarah awoke to find her pumpkin had grown overnight. It was now twice its original size, and the skin seemed to throb like a beating heart. Disturbed, she decided to return it to the patch. But when she arrived at the field, her blood ran cold. The pumpkins were gone. In their place were rows of people, buried up to their necks in the soil. Their eyes were wide with terror, mouths stretched in silent screams. And there, at the end of a row, was a fresh hole, just the right size for Sarah. The old man's voice came from behind her once more. "I told you it was tradition," he chuckled. "We always need new seeds for next year's crop." Sarah tried to run, but roots burst from the earth, wrapping around her ankles. As she was dragged into the waiting hole, her scream was cut short by the soil filling her mouth. The last thing she saw was the old man's face, grinning down at her as the earth closed over her head. They say if you visit Hollow Creek in October and listen closely, you can hear muffled screams coming from beneath the pumpkin patch. But no one ever investigates. After all, it's tradition. Unsettling, isn't it? How the most innocent traditions can hide the darkest secrets. But let us move on to our next tale, where the forests hold mysteries far more terrifying than any pumpkin patch. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, there's a forest known to locals as the Whispering Wood. Hikers report strange phenomena, compasses spinning wildly, GPS devices malfunctioning, and an oppressive silence broken only by faint, indecipherable whispers. Mark was a seasoned hiker who scoffed at such stories. Armed with his trusty equipment and years of experience, he set out to debunk the myths surrounding the Whispering Wood. The first day passed uneventfully. Mark made good progress, noting nothing unusual except for an odd absence of wildlife. As night fell, he set up camp, building a small fire to ward off the autumn chill. That's when he first heard the whispers. At first, Mark dismissed them as the wind in the trees. But as the night wore on, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. They seemed to be coming from all around him, yet he couldn't make out a single word. Sleep eluded him. When dawn broke, Mark packed up quickly, eager to leave the unsettling campsite behind. But as he hiked, he realized something was wrong. The sun was in the wrong position. His compass needle spun in lazy circles, and the whispers, The whispers were getting louder. Mark tried to retrace his steps, but nothing looked familiar. The trees seemed to shift and move when he wasn't looking directly at them. And always, the whispers grew louder. By the third day, Mark was frantic. He'd run out of water, and the whispers had become a constant, maddening presence. They were almost clear now, almost understandable. If he could just listen a little harder. On the seventh day, a search party found Mark's backpack. It was sitting in a small clearing, untouched. Of Mark himself, there was no sign. The search was called off after 2 weeks. Months later, a group of hikers reported seeing a gaunt, wild-eyed man deep in the whispering wood. He was wandering aimlessly, muttering to himself. When they called out to him, he turned, revealing eyes that were completely white. "Can't you hear them?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "They're telling me the secrets of the forest. I just need to listen a little longer." The hikers fled, and by the time they brought help, the man was gone. But to this day, hikers in the whispering wood sometimes catch glimpses of a emaciated figure moving through the trees, always just out of reach. And if you listen closely, you might hear a voice among the whispers, begging you to stay and listen. Just a little longer. The forests hold many secrets, don't they? But sometimes the most terrifying stories come from within our own communities. Let us turn our attention to a small town where Halloween brings more than just candy and costumes. In the town of Millbrook, the annual Halloween Raffle was the highlight of the year. Every adult resident bought tickets, eager for a chance to win the mysterious grand prize. No one knew what the prize was. It changed every year. But winners always seemed to leave town shortly after, their lives transformed. Emma had just turned 18, making her eligible for the raffle for the first time. She bought a single ticket, more out of obligation than interest. The night of the drawing, the entire town gathered in the square, an air of excitement and tension hanging over the crowd. The mayor reached into the giant glass bowl, his hand swirling among the tickets. Emma held her breath, not sure if she wanted to win or not. And then, Emma Thompson. The crowd cheered as Emma made her way to the stage, her heart pounding. The mayor handed her an envelope, smiling broadly. "Congratulations," he said. "Your prize awaits you at the old Miller house. Go there at midnight, alone, and all will be revealed." Emma spent the rest of the evening in a daze, wondering what her prize could be. As midnight approached, she made her way to the Miller house, an abandoned Victorian at the edge of town. The front door creaked open at her touch. Inside, candles flickered, illuminating a path to the basement. Emma followed, her curiosity overcoming her fear. In the basement, she found a circle of hooded figures. In the center stood an ornate chair, almost like a throne. The mayor stepped forward, his smile now predatory. "Congratulations, Emma," he said. "You've won the greatest prize of all. You get to be this year's sacrifice." Before Emma could run, strong hands grabbed her, forcing her into the chair. As the hooded figures began to chant, Emma realized the terrible truth. The raffle wasn't about winning at all. It was about choosing who to lose. They say the screams from the Miller house that night could be heard all over town. But no one came to help. After all, it was tradition. And in Millbrook, tradition was everything. The next day, Emma's parents packed up and left town, their faces blank and their eyes empty. And the town began to prepare for next year's raffle, wondering who would be the lucky winner. Unsettling, isn't it? How the promise of a prize can lead us into darkness. But let us move on to our next tale, where the lines between reality and nightmare begin to blur. In a small New England college town, there was a legend about the Autumn King. Every year, as the leaves began to turn, students would whisper about sightings of a figure crowned with golden leaves. his robes the color of fall foliage. Mia, a skeptical graduate student, decided to research the legend for her folklore thesis. She interviewed locals, pored over old newspapers, and spent long nights in the library's archives. As autumn progressed, Mia began to notice strange things. Leaves would form perfect circles around her as she walked. The wind seemed to whisper her name. And everywhere she went, she caught glimpses of a tall figure just at the edge of her vision. One night, working late in the library, Mia fell asleep at her desk. She awoke to find the library transformed. The bookshelves had become trees, their leaves rustling with secrets. And there, standing before her, was the Autumn King. His eyes were pools of molten gold, his smile both beautiful and terrible. "You've been looking for me," he said, his voice like the crunch of leaves underfoot. "Now you've found me. Are you ready to pay the price?" Mia tried to run, but roots burst from the floor, wrapping around her ankles. The Autumn King approached, his hand outstretched. "Every legend needs new blood," he said. "It's time for you to become part of the story." As his hand touched her forehead, Mia felt herself changing. Her skin turned to bark, her hair to leaves. She tried to scream, but only the rustle of leaves emerged. The next morning, the librarian found Mia's notes scattered across an empty desk. Mia herself was nowhere to be found. But outside, a new tree had appeared overnight, its leaves a brilliant gold, even as the other trees began to shed theirs. And if you visit that college town in the autumn, you might catch a glimpse of two figures walking among the falling leaves. The Autumn King, resplendent in his golden crown, and beside him, a queen with eyes that seem to plead for help, even as she reaches for the next unwary student. The changing of the seasons brings more than just new colors to the world. It can bring ancient powers back to life. But for our final tale, we return to the realm of the living, where sometimes the greatest horrors are those we create ourselves. In a bustling city, there was a small costume shop that appeared every October. It was tucked away in a narrow alley, easy to miss unless you were looking for it. The shop specialized in Halloween masks, each one a unique, handcrafted work of art. Jake was a struggling actor, desperate for his big break. When he heard about the shop from a fellow actor, he decided to check it out, hoping to find the perfect mask for an upcoming audition. The shop was cluttered and dimly lit, masks of every description lining the walls. An old woman appeared from the back, her eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "I have just the thing for you," she said, before Jake could even speak. She brought out a mask unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It seemed to shift and change as he looked at it, one moment horrifying, the next beautiful. "This mask will make you a star," the old woman promised. "But remember, all power comes with a price." Jake barely heard her warning. He bought the mask and left, eager to try it on. The moment he put it on, he felt different, powerful, confident. He went to his audition and gave the performance of a lifetime. The roles started pouring in. Jake was suddenly in demand, lauded as the most versatile actor of his generation. But there was a problem. He couldn't take the mask off. At first, Jake told himself it was fine. The mask was his good luck charm. But as weeks turned to months, he began to panic. He tried everything to remove it, but the mask seemed to have fused with his skin. And worse, he was changing. His body was becoming leaner, more angular. His voice deepened and rasped. He found himself thinking thoughts that weren't his own, craving things he'd never wanted before. A year after buying the mask, Jake returned to the alley. But the shop was gone, replaced by a blank brick wall. As he stood there, staring in disbelief, he caught his reflection in a puddle. The face looking back at him wasn't human anymore. It was the mask, but alive, grinning with too many teeth. and Jake realized, with a jolt of horror, that he wasn't wearing the mask anymore. He had become the mask. They say there's a new costume shop in the city now. It appears every October in a different location each year, and if you visit, you might find a mask that looks eerily familiar. A mask that promises to make all your dreams come true. But remember, as you reach for it, all power comes with a price. And so, dear listeners, we come to the end of our journey through the shadows. I hope these tales have sent a delightful chill down your spine and given you pause the next time you encounter a mysterious pumpkin patch or an enticing Halloween mask. If you enjoyed these nightmares, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with those who appreciate the darker side of storytelling. And don't forget to leave a comment with your own spooky tales. Who knows, they might inspire a future episode. Until next time, remember, the shadows are always watching. Sweet dreams, if you dare to sleep at all.